Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk9527. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we're back with Punk4745. He's a 480 with an eye mask, thin mohawk, shadow beard, and a trademark red nose. In real life, he's a fine art major and artist that works with various mediums such as paintings, sculptures, and installations. He's also received honors from his work from curators from New York's MoMA and the Met. And he was also early to Web3, in particular NFTs. He's also one of the co-founders of DGen Arcade with fellow PunkCast alum Tony Herrera. Please welcome Mr. Jeremy Penn to the show. Penn, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good. Nice to finally connect after all this time. Where are you based?
So I'm based in Brooklyn, New York.
Ah, nice. Well, nice to finally have you on. Maybe we could just start with an introduction and a bit of your background, and I think we can sort of take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm not one of those really vocal personalities on crypto Twitter. I'm not really into shaking things up and being controversial. So I think a lot of people don't know my background. So it's a good opportunity to kind of explain how I got into this space and what kind of led me into the development of DGen Arcade and what I'm working on now. I'm a career artist based in New York City. I had my first solo show in 2007. In 2009, a photograph came across my way, changed my entire life, but that's a story for another time. The story is absolutely wild, and it's something that's going to be turned into an NFT project. It's in the works right now. But aside from that, in around, I would say 2012, I started getting opportunities to travel the world, to exhibit my art and collaborate with a lot of brands. To my surprise, I fell in love with brand work. It was not something that, as people would say, would be on my bingo card. Making a conscious choice to dedicate my time to helping brands connect back with their original culture and the users. It was really different than my fine art career. It was just something that was unexpected. And I didn't go fully corporate at all. I kind of went in there with like a take it or leave it approach. And what ends up happening when you have limited capacity and you kind of have the attitude of, take it or leave it, you get handed a lot of power. And that is not part of my design process at all. I believe the design process is best when it's collaborative. Like a myriad of perspectives is critical in the success of a brand's messaging and the products that they bring to market. So after I was brought in to it was kind of like Office Space. I don't know if you remember that movie where you had those two guys that were like asking everyone what they did here. It felt a little bit like that to me, and what I needed to do was connect with these design teams. So it took a couple of days to level set with them before we were all on the same page and really get things going.
Jeremy, when you talk about design for corporates and brands, like what kind of businesses or design work would you kind of take on?
Good question. I started really doing artistic collaborations where I would paint for the brand Cotton, or I would do a collaboration with a a Brazilian shoe brand, and I would paint a line of their shoes. But what it ended up happening was I ended up leading a lot of these creative design teams. So I was basically acting as creative director for some of these brands and was brought into agencies. So it went into like everything from font choice to immersive development. A big thing where I found my biggest success was in creating physical environments. And if you ever walked into a DJ arcade, you probably got a taste of like what I do, which is creating an inclusive but exclusive environment for people to come in. That's just transformative. Um, so it did cover a lot of parts of the design process, from font to brand messaging
Customer
to
experience.
physical. Yeah.
So, and I think Jeremy might be worthwhile as well. Maybe just going a little bit further back into your background. I know you sort of studied art, but of all the things you could have studied, why did you pick art?
As my parents would say, when I was around 4, they didn't know if I was just going to do something special in the world or become a serial killer. I mean, that's what they go around and said. I just have this strong aversion to someone telling me to draw within the lines. And I was just a good artist. I just knew how to paint. Um, and I think it has to do with inherent, and this is one of those things that's like kind of a gift and a curse at the same time. Anyone who is an artist can probably relate to this. There is a heightened sensitivity when you come into the world. I do think as a child it was really hard because you feel so much and it's so intense. And part of my childhood was thinking, why aren't other people affected in the same way I am? And later in life you begin to utilize that and turn it into a strength. And that is where probably I found success with helping the brands connect with their culture, because I felt what was happening. I was able to see where things were going because just of this innate sensitivity. So the fine art part, it just felt natural to me. It wasn't, I couldn't go into accounting or banking. It just wasn't in my DNA to be able to sit down and crunch numbers. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just me. I'm just a creative spirit that needs to kind of express all my feelings through my art. But again, I also said I would never be working in a corporate environment. And there I was. So who knows if accounting is in my future.
Gotcha. And growing up, did you collect art or anything else of that nature?
I didn't. I went from art school to graffiti writing because I was a little bit of a punk kid, and then went to college for art, and that's where things got serious for me. And then I left art school after I graduated. I was like, I feel way overeducated. Like, it felt to me that I was just fed information on how to do things, and what ended up happening was I lost my authentic voice. You get very technical when you um, are going through that really intense art process. You just learn how to do certain things and you get caught up in that. So I took a little bit of time off before I began painting again to kind of find my voice and, get to the purity of why I wanted to be an artist. But things got really, really crazy after. We should definitely tap into um, what happened after I pulled back from working with these design teams, because that's when things got a little wild in my career.
Yeah. So let's walk through that. So okay, so you went through art school. What was your next journey after that? Did you just jump straight into corporate
No, no,
or
I didn't. After art school, I traveled a bit and then I began painting. I began painting a lot, and then I started getting some traction, and in 2000, I was started having work in some group shows with galleries, and then in 2007, I had my first solo show, and then from there, it was like a bit of a rocket ship. It was just show after show. It was weird. It was a time where publicity was like a big thing in art, and I was getting collected by a lot of housewives of New York and Beverly Hills, and I just had my artwork out there. And
What
as an
kind
as
what kind of
go ahead.
things, what kind of pieces were you drawing, or what kind of themes were you sort of into back then?
So I was really into the way that humans interact with one another. To me, that was like a fascinating thing, evolution, where we came from. And I told the stories through my art. A lot of my art is comes from a lot of reading. So like I did one series that was all based on the Age of Enlightenment. And it's not what people expected. So like I did these really big portraits of strong female figures. That was one of my first shows. And the I'd say half of the characters, the portraits were front facing and the other half were looking away. And it was a study of dominance versus submission. Um, and the people, when they locked eyes with the subject, it was just like this moment that you just felt. Um, I guess you'd call it they call it the gaze in art. But I love playing with people's interaction with the art itself. So I went from those portraits to working with a lot of reflective materials. So I had a lot of text-based work with mirrors, and that was really interesting because people could see themselves within the work. So I always liked playing with the observer, even though part of why I became an artist was my connection to the art itself, right? It was like my thread with the painting was something really special. And if I started thinking about what the observer thought about the painting, I kind of lost my connection to the art. I was creating art for them. So I kind of went into another realm where I was actually playing with the observer. And that was really interesting to me.
And then at what moment do you feel like everything started taking off for you? What was there a particular moment that, or a particular piece of work or collection that did that for you?
I would say when my artwork was exhibited in Art Basel, that was it. And it was interesting is I didn't sell any pieces in that show, but the gallery brought that entire collection to New York for Scope New York, and the entire collection sold out. But the notoriety came from Art Basel. And then oddly enough, like it's so cringy to talk about, but like I was in the like page 6 like a couple of times without my knowing. Um, I don't know
Um,
why.
Page
It's a
six of
weird
what?
weird so
Of,
page 6 is like a the I don't know how to describe it. It's in the New York Post. It's kind of like
okay,
the
gotcha.
who's been spotted where paragraph, and it's like why am I, being brought into this kind of like hype world? Um, so it was interesting.
That's cool.
Definitely
Got
definitely
a bit of the
unexpected.
fame. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then so what was, so you went through that art journey after university, and then what was next for you?
Yeah, so I my art career happened. Um, it really took off. I took probably a couple of years between series to do research and then come back out and release it. And that was kind of the cycle of my work. And then I started collabing with brands, like I mentioned before, and I kind of fell in love with this corporate world. I still got to paint most of the time, but I came in and fixed a lot of design problems and started building out immersive environments for brands. Um, and then what ended up happening was, as I said earlier, I started pulling back because of that kind of stigma around like this guy is going to come in and change work that other people have been working on for 2 years. That's not what I wanted to do at all. I just didn't. I didn't like the pretense that came with my presence in these design teams. So I pulled back, focused heavily on my art, and walked into an abandoned dry cleaner in not the bougie part of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, but like the really fucked up part of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I walked in there with a friend and fell in love with it. And from that moment on, I took that abandoned dry cleaner, kept the original name called Good Luck Dry Cleaners, kept the outside just as is with the boarded up windows and the faded red and yellow sign above, and turned it into a cultural hub. And we had everyone from artists like Banksy to graffiti writers I used to write with back in the day exhibited there. And that quickly became like the it space to be.
Was this
Um,
before Williamsburg became cool, or?
no, it was definitely after Williamsburg became cool, but it was a part of Williamsburg that certainly wasn't cool. It was like it was like the perfect intersection between um, like where a lot of Dominicans live and a lot of Hasidic Jews live, and it was just like this kind of unspoken tension that existed about like who is where, who's going to move where. It was a weird intersection that the dry cleaner was in, um, which made it really interesting for many reasons. Because we ended up having really high end brands do photo shoots in there, and we would take some of the boards down, and you saw people looking through the windows. I mean, I had pictures that would crack you up. But we went from that abandoned dry cleaner to the windows of Saks Fifth Avenue in 6 months, which was like something I've never expected, and that was one of the wildest journeys I've been on in my career for sure. And I've been to a lot of strange places and been through a lot of crazy shit. That trajectory was like nothing I've ever experienced.
That's crazy. Um, I'm having a look at a couple of your installs with some of the brands I had. The Saks Fifth one looks really, really cool. That window. So
Yeah.
how did you get discovered? Did they just turn up to the laundromat, or how did that all
Yeah,
come
so
about?
we ended up getting kind of a name for ourselves. It was people were coming and photographing. I took a lot of my experience building out spaces and working with brands and brought it into this space. I mean, it was a total experiment, and with no like set intention to go anywhere. And with that came just like a ton of amazing opportunities. So Saks Fifth Avenue must have saw it on someone's Instagram and reached out to us, and they shot a Stella McCartney campaign within the space, and then they said, "We want to do more with you guys. How do we lock this up for a longer term partnership?" So we signed the deal with them. We ended up doing their spring catalog where I brought street artists that I've known from around the world to create these vignettes, and we had models photographed within them. Then the next phase of our partnership was we were going to open up the dry cleaner in the basement of Saks Fifth Avenue. Now, this is where things are wild. Um, they offered us any space in the flagship store on Fifth Avenue, and we walked the entire building and we went to the basement. And in the basement is this 1950s style salon that a lot of people don't know about. And the second I walked in, I was like, this is it. Um, Besides like the creepy, cool vibes of being in the basement of a New York City staple, there's one elevator in Saks that's not deemed to be historic, and that's the elevator to the basement. And I was like, all right, so this is like the Willy Wonka opportunity here to like transform people's experience when we open
Crazy.
up this space. So I ended up wrapping that entire elevator in gold chrome foil and had 500 to 600 gold waving cats when you walked in.
Mhm.
Um, we demolished the salon and built that space. We built Good Luck Dry Cleaners in the basement there and turned it into like the hardest room to get into for New York City Fashion Week. It was absolutely crazy. We had the things that we did there are something I don't think we could ever do these days. We had Sasha Grey. I don't know if you're familiar. She's like a famous
Adults.
adult star. She's actually super. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Super smart. She was DJing with Swizz Beats on a 12-foot Shark Tank that we brought into Saks Fifth Avenue in the
Crazy.
basement.
How big
We
was this
had
place? How big was this basement? It's been huge.
it was big. It was big. We had a very healthy footprint of that basement. I'd say it was around 4,000 square feet
Yeah, it's huge.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Biz Markie wrapping. It was incredible. And from there, we rolled right into doing the windows.
What just can you timestamp this for us? Like what year was this? How long ago was this?
This was 2017,
Yeah.
2018.
Just the birth of Bitcoin. Oh, actually no.
Yeah,
A year after. Yeah.
yeah. I actually bought Bitcoin in 2012
Wow.
and sold it like a year later for a small profit, but I just kind of loved the idea of it. Um, and in 2017, I wasn't buying it at all. I was fully occupied with
This
the dry
this
cleaner.
the dry cleaner basement. Cool.
Yeah, and then after that, by the way, it was like real estate owners were handing us their spaces and paying us to open up within their vacant retail spaces. And we had space after space, and it was just it was incredible. And there was one thing that happened that was really relevant to punks. This is actually a good story. We knew someone who, when CBGB's, which was the iconic punk club of New York City, closed down and got turned into a John Varvatos store, we knew someone who salvaged the most iconic parts of that club: the phone booth, the bar, the stage, all the iconic parts. And we were like, we got to do something with this. So one of the real estate owners had a space 3 doors down from the original CBGB space and gave it to us. And we opened CBGB's back on the Bowery for like half a year. And that was just crazy. We just had a full exhibition of the space and rebuilt it,
Amazing.
which is pretty punk.
Why do you think all these real estate guys wanted you guys to open up in this sort of space? Is it sort of like a traffic driver for them, or a way to reinvigorate old spaces?
It, at the time, there was a lot of retail. Like, it was like retail was dead in New York City. And we were this kind of counterculture that was emerging. It was like, how do we make New York feel like New York again? Like, I grew up in the dangerous part, like the dangerous times in New York, and I remember it feeling alive. And there came a point in the 2017, 2018 where it just felt kind of sterile, and it was getting really just too polished. And there was this kind of need for a little bit of what I call sexy danger, like to bring it back to that time. And we definitely were that element. We were collabing with a ton of brands that would just come in, and we just did some crazy shit. I don't even know how we got away with some of the stuff we did.
What are you gonna have to share some of that crazy shit with us, Jeremy? Like what couple of the craziest things that went down?
Without trying to not break any NDAs here. I think they probably expired. So I was on my way to LA. This is a wild story. I was on my way to LA. My partner at the time was in New York, and he got an email from a brand conglomerate that basically buys a bunch of brands. They own a bunch of brands, and they wrote an email to us saying, "We want to have a meeting with you. We think you'd be perfect for helping launch one of our brands, or helping relaunch one of our brands." And my partner wrote back, and he was like, "Sounds great. How about Friday at 12:30?" And he said, "Well, can you tell us more about which brand you're thinking of?" And they wrote back, "Friday, 12:30 sounds perfect. We'll see you then." And like totally ignored the question. And like we were talking back and forth, like, what could it possibly be? And I was in California at the time, and he had the meeting, and he called me up after the meeting. He's like, "You'll never fucking guess." Am I allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay, good. "You'll never fucking guess who the brand was." And I was like, I'm not playing this game. Just tell me. And he's like, "Think about the most toxic brand that you'll never touch with a 10-foot pole." And immediately I was like, there's only one I would never touch. And that was Ed Hardy. I don't know if you remember Ed Hardy.
Yeah, I do.
So I was like, he was like, "Yep, that's the one." I'm like, "We're not touching it. Fuck no. We're not going near that. There's nothing we can do to save that brand." And as time went on, we were like, all right, if anyone can do this, it's us. Like at the time, we were really like the hot ticket in town. If we pull this off, maybe we can just cement our legacies in brand, re-imaging. But in order for them to do it, they had to give us the keys to the castle and do whatever we wanted. And what we did was borderline shocking, but it worked.
What was it?
Well, we had like people like Pauly D from the Jersey Shore, like
Oh yeah,
people who used the people who destroyed the Ed Hardy name, right? Like Dennis Rodman and all these people. We were like, let's bring them back. Let's like, if we're gonna bring this brand back to life, we have to deem it like completely dead. Like, let's not try to pretend it's gonna just naturally turn around. Let's kill it and then bring it back and make fun of, what it was. And in fact, actually, I could pull over here, right here. We made this wine called Rhinestone Tiger. I don't know if you could see it, where we had a picture of John Gosling, who was a reality star who they say ruined the brand by wearing it. So we made Rhinestone Tiger Rosé. And yeah, it was amazing. And now they're selling in some really, really high-end stores. I mean, Ed Hardy himself was truly punk.
Are they back like now?
Yeah,
or?
they are. They're not doing the
Crazy.
rhinestone t-shirts anymore, but they are doing these really high-end custom jackets. Ed Hardy was a tattoo artist who used to do illegal tattoos in basements in New York City. So that dude is punk, and he's the real deal. And what happened to his brand is tragic, but he did walk away with a shit ton of money. So
yeah, I can remember that time. I mean, I was growing up in Melbourne, but around 2018 at that time, and Ed Hardy, Christian Audigier were sort of starting to pop up on the streets. And I think in Melbourne, a lot of the mafia, Italian mafia guys would be wearing that around, rocking that around. And I think they wanted it to be a little bit of, or for it to have a bit of a notorious sort of cult following, right? So, but yeah, I think there was that brand, and maybe Von Dutch was probably the other one that was in that sort of same vein, but in that era. That's cool.
That's the same thing. I would have touched that before Ed Hardy, but we had a good time. We had a tattoo artist come and do tattoos in the space. It was crazy. People got like people just came in. There was lines for people to get tattoos. People
That's
just didn't
crazy.
care. They just came and they just felt the energy and they're like, let's do it.
Yeah. So I didn't forgive my ignorance here. So Ed Hardy's still alive. Like he's still rocking
Yeah.
and active. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. What an amazing story. I'm sure you would have done so much during that sort of era and had so much fun. What was next for you? Like so that was 2017, 2018. What was next?
Yeah. So that lasted until I'd say January 2020. And there were some creative differences between me and my partner at the time. And I just exited. I was like, it's time for me to take the next step in my journey. And then a month later, COVID hit
Mm.
and everything kind of shut down. And with that came huge opportunities. I mean, I was diving into NFTs probably in January, that at around the same time that I exited. And as the world kind of shut down and communities were being formed, I saw like, wow, this isn't going to last forever. I could take everything I've learned up until this point, like all the skills of building out spaces, connecting people, just real authentic experiences, and bring it to this space. And that's kind of like the genesis ethos of Degen Arcade.
What was your first NFT, Jeremy? Remember?
So my first NFT, even though I do believe I dabbled in CryptoKitties, I don't remember. I swear I did, and have no idea where anything is. My first uh, NFT back was a pixel penguin from Bouvet. You know the artist? I think he's a punk.
Okay. Bouvet. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Is the Mongolian guy? Is he the Mongolian?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I got it was a Prince pixel penguin. That's a tongue twister. With the whole purple Prince outfit with the purple rain raining down. I love that piece.
Cool. And then what was your sort of journey into punks at the time? So this was sort of when COVID just sort of hit.
Yeah, I mean, punks were unattainable for me at the time because I was still learning. It took me a few months to kind of realize, all right, I'm going to start allocating some serious capital to investing in these assets. And punks kind of just were out of my reach, but I always admired them. And look, I come from the art world, and I know when something so profound happens like digital art, it's something to pay attention to. And I believe punks are the icon of this time. So I always wanted one, and it was definitely something I wanted to aspire to. I never traded up for one because I'm a terrible trader. I'm a horrible trader. I mean, my wallet is proof of that. Um, I'm an artist. I buy what I love and I leave it there because I just have this like weird sensitivity to connecting with art, and it's special to me. Um, but punks were something it was like a symbol for me to reach for. And then ultimately I did.
um. So what were punks? When you sort of say unattainable, what was a flaw of punks at the time? Do you remember?
I I don't remember, but I do. The one time I remember discussing, I was with a friend that was like, "Punks are 50 grand." I was like,
Mm.
"I don't think I could spend 50 grand on a CryptoPunk." Mind you, like 3 months later, I spent 65,000 on a CloneX, which we don't need to talk about. Um, but yeah, um,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't
Yeah. So
remember punks at the time.
yeah, I do. I think there would have been like March 21. There would have been a floor of 21, 22 ETH or 23 ETH, just when they had that little run up. It would have been that early because I got in and out around that same time as well. Um, cool. And then ha- when you said that you were an artist and you sort of understood, um, when something profound happens. What was your sort of discovery process with punks? Do you remember? Like, how did you find out about punks? How did you start going down the rabbit hole around it? How did you get your head around punks and what they actually were?
So I saw them being used as PFPs. The simplicity of it was really intriguing to me, but it wasn't until having a conversation with Tony Herrera where I understood the importance of some of these traits. Like he broke it down for me, and he's super passionate about these things, and he took the time, like he does. He's very generous with his time, and explained it all to me. And some of the traits I connected with, understanding. I didn't really care about the floor price at the time, um, but just hearing his passion, learning more about it, understanding that this was something bigger than just pixels. Um, to me, when I heard him talk, I was like, "There's something here. There's something really special here. If this is a symbol of the time, like this is the one. Like if this is a moment in art history, punks are the icon of that time."
How did you get connected with Tony?
Through Danny Boy.
Okay,
He
yeah,
and
yeah.
I went to junior high school together. I don't remember, but apparently I used to sell him candy, like I was like selling fake watches in junior high. And he just connected. He saw that I was into NFT trading and reached out, and we reconnected, and he connected me with Tony. And from there, you know, I always wanted a punk, and I ended up getting one.
Amazing. Um, I I think I mentioned just before we started the show that I did catch up with Danny when he was here in Hong Kong for 8 Fest last year, and tell him about his story, how he got into it all with Tony. But I think he's an accountant, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I was doing all the books and started learning that way. But I definitely have to get him on as well because he's got a really interesting story too. Um,
Yeah.
and so you started talking with Tony, and then you eventually bought 4745 from Tony.
Hmm.
How were you thinking about the traits, and which ones to sort of collect? Was it a hard decision for you, or did Tony was it whatever Tony had in the bag? What was your decision process there?
It wasn't about what Tony had available in his bag, but it was just I looked at the floor as well. I wanted if I was going to spend this kind of money on something, I really wanted it to have character and tell a story. And I think my punk does that. I think for me, I see it and I'm like, all right, I could build a whole narrative around this character. Um, it seems it seems like there's everything kind of lines up towards one direction. I remember having a long conversation with Noah, who I absolutely adore, um, from CryptoPunks. I mean, who used to lead CryptoPunks, and he was talking to me about how my punk has got a lot of S&M traits. You could do a whole line of
Butt
sex
bondage.
toys with it. Yeah. Definitely not the path that I want to go, but it was interesting. Um, I do. There's something about it, and I remember as a kid when I was 5, I told my mother I wanted to be a clown, and I'll never forget because my mother was super loving and never critical, but she said to me, "Clowns make no money," and she was never that blunt with me my entire life. But I connected with it, and it just felt balanced and pretty cool. It doesn't mean it's my dream punk, but I do love it.
What is your dream punk?
Wild White.
Yeah. Well, what's it called?
That's I want a wild white female. That is my grail. If I could get one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know people love zombies and aliens. They're dope as fuck, don't get me wrong, but I like what I like, and I love the
Yeah.
wild white.
Yeah, I do too. I had another punk on who's got a wild white with the VR goggles. So absolutely stunning combination. And I think Noah put me onto that one too. So he's a big fan of that particular combination. But it's a beautiful sort of trait combo.
Yeah, I've never met anyone haven't met anyone in a long time that has such a good eye for art like him.
Noah
That
or
guy
Sov?
does. Noah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I mean cool. So Wild White would be your dream punk.
Yep.
And then how do you sort of see punks then? Are they works of art to you, or more of a collectible?
I don't see them as a collectible. I don't necessarily see them as a work of art either. I see them as a moment in time. I believe that anything that disrupts is gonna own a piece of history. And I think that while we're in it right now and say good, bad, or otherwise about digital art, from the perspective of people in the art world, it had a profound effect. It disrupted what we believe to be just art in itself, and the same way that abstract art disrupted traditional impressionist art. Right? It had this moment where it opened up a whole new pathway, and that in itself is something that will have importance in the future. And I believe that punks and a few others will be the icons of that time.
What are the others that come to mind?
I'll say one, Squiggles. I think Squiggles and punks are the two iconic pieces of the digital art revolution.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Cool. And then so bouncing around a little bit back too, because I don't think we got to touch on DJ and Arcade. Your story with Tony and Danny, that whole sort of relationship. You went and bought your punk from Tony. He got you sort of well versed on the space. How did that sort of evolve into you guys working together on DJ and Arcade? And I guess for the listeners, what is DJ and Arcade?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I really wanted to find a way to bring my skill sets to this space, Web3. It just felt like it needed a place for people to connect IRL. People were hiding behind their PFPs. They would talk on Clubhouse. We were all locked in at a certain time. People wanted to connect IRL, and it felt like partially responsible, because when you put a face to people, it's much easier to like build real genuine connection. And I believe that's how you avoid, you kind of dilute the idea of scams when you can really see people one on one. So I felt like there was an opportunity and a responsibility to create a hub for people to connect from different communities. So I was like, let's build that. Let's build it while people are starting to thaw out and go out again. Let's get these communities together and kind of tap into exactly what is important to them, right? community, gamification, dopamine, all of those things where they can have fun. And that was the driving force of DJ Arcade. And I was like, we got to create a piece of technology that makes this frictionless. So I guess you'd call our beta test was taking an old claw machine, filling it with QR codes, and people paid us. They got a token. They played the arcade machine, the claw machine, pulled the QR code out, and then redeemed it at the desk. And it was great. I mean, we had a ton of people there playing. We gave away a bunch of assets, and we learned a lot about what people want, the pain points in the process, and then we started ideating and developing the arcade cabinet that was going to be fully Web3 enabled, where there were no physical tokens. It was all done on the machine itself.
Gotcha. Are you guys still active today? Like, I know you guys did some stuff around Art Basel and activations around NFT NYC.
Yeah,
Where are you
so
guys?
we were developing the machine for around a year. The software that was in the machine was really, it took a lot of development. There was a lot of planning and a lot of it took a lot to remove those pain points of instant pay, automatic redemption, sending the NFT to the wallet without us having to send it ourselves. We during the process, because it took a long time, we want to keep the momentum. We had a event at Art Basel where we partnered with Haritos and Don Julio, and then we revealed the machine for the first time at NFT NYC. It was finally ready. It was a big success. Everyone loved it. And then there were a couple of things that a couple of outstanding pain points that we needed to fix. A lot of people didn't see it, didn't experience it, but we experienced it. So it took like a bunch of modifications after NFT NYC. I believe that's something that's still being worked on. There are some upgrades being done to the original machine. I stepped aside to develop something new, which we could dive into
Yeah, of course.
if you like. But
Is this the photo that you're talking about early on?
no, that's something entirely different, which is absolutely a crazy story that I'm not trying to haunt people with. But yeah, I mean, what we learned from DJ Arcade was something really fascinating, and I believe that there's a huge market for it. People want this. They want the machine is so powerful. It was first of its kind. No one's ever created anything like it, and people would not stop playing. And that to me says like, wow, there's real legs here. But at the same time, I was building that company out for around a year. I have 3 kids. I had to really kind of hunker down and like find my path towards something. And if it was either continuing to build out Degen Arcade or something different, I decided to take the route of building something different.
So what are you doing now?
So I partnered with people from Rockstar Games and Spotify, and we're called Arcade, which is very similar. We developed a module that integrates into a brand's existing loyalty platform and supercharges it with gamification and uses cognitive science to modify human behaviors. I know that's a lot, but really, we're talking about high dopamine experiences that are high value adds to users. And um, we've been building it now for, I'd say, around a year, maybe a little bit more. And we finally have our demo done. We're talking with some big brands about integration, and it's exciting.
Nice. Is this RKD?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So could you share a little bit more about how it works? Like, so I think you've got like AI systems and stuff like that, but what's the high level, TLDR on how this all works?
Yeah. So I can't dive too much into it because
Okay.
there's some proprietary stuff there.
Yeah.
But it is that high value instant gamified experience that unlocks a lot of benefits to both the user and the brand.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
our core belief is that the consumer and brand relationship is something that needs a lot of attention. It is something that is we've just gotten used to the proverbial punch card, 9 cups of coffee, you get your 10th free, or point systems. And the reality is it's not enough. There's got to be a better way. Um,
Is it Web3
Brand,
related?
there is a blockchain component to it. Yes,
Okay, cool. Cool, cool.
very much so.
Um, cool. All right. Well, looking forward to seeing or hearing more about it when the time's right.
Yeah.
Um, cool. And then I guess maybe just shifting gears a little bit back to punks, just to I know we're sort of coming towards the end of the hour. Um, if you were to look across into the punk community, would you have any favorite punks worth mentioning?
I obviously love Tony. I love Dan. Um, Two great people. I always say they're like salt of the earth kind of human beings. Um, I love Snowfro. I think he is a gem of a human. I think he's like a pure artist. Um, I think Jack Butcher
Yeah.
is creating something incredibly unique in this space. And I think he is someone I'm paying very close attention to. Um, I mean, there's a bunch of punks I love. I mean, really, the community is so great. I love my punk, but it's almost like an access ticket to a carnival. It's just
To see more clowns.
fun. Yeah, it's a special place.
Yeah, totally agree. On that note, then, how would you describe punk culture for you?
Ooh, punk culture. I'd say it's really inclusive, which I think is something that people may be surprised to hear. I think it is really inclusive. It is. They do welcome people. I mean, people are cool as fuck in this community. Um, and I'd say the other word I'd use is support. People are always willing to offer support for one another, and I love that.
Yeah, well said. Um, how do you feel about punks now? I mean, we're sort of mid 2024. Depths of the feels like the depths of the NFT bear. Um, how do you sort of feel about punks and where we go from here?
I am totally not worried about the floor price of punks. I It is a bad market for NFTs, but this is punks are bigger than bulls and bears. It just they're icons of a time, and I think the further we get away from that, the more powerful they're going to be. And the time shift I'm talking about is the 2020, 2021, when digital art kind of had its rise. Um, I believe they're just going to grow in power.
Yeah.
And I am not, I mean, as far as capitulation is concerned, it's a great opportunity to find my wild white. So
Totally
hit
is.
me up.
No, I think I'm there with you as well. I think depending, bull or bear, punk's always going to do their thing. But I think some of it had to sort of wash out. But definitely, I think the punks have been quite resilient in terms of the culture that we sort of maintain and the people that are still here, and still active in the sort of the punk community. So which is good to see.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think there's good leadership. I'm not one for causing controversy, but I could say some pretty controversial things at the moment. But I think
do it.
there's some. I think that the leadership is doing a great job. I think Stone is fantastic. I think getting artists, even though people didn't love the collab with Nina Chanel, she is of a pedigree that is very impressive, and that that collab surprised me, um, and I was really proud to see that happen.
Mm.
And I think more collabs like that
Proud in
with
what sense?
that punks are really focusing on fine art, the fine art aspect of it. I think Noah did an incredible job laying that foundation. Um, Even though I'm still waiting on my punk's lunchbox. Um, and I think that Stone's doing a really good job. And look, it's not easy for Yuga to take on punks, but I think for what it's worth, I think that they're doing a good job preserving punks, and that's being not fucked with.
Yeah.
And high level collaborations with artists like Nina, who is a powerhouse. Like, you can't expect everyone to come to Web3 because you think it's great. It is great, but it's not easy to get there. Having someone like Nina validate Web3's existence and punk's importance is massive. If you're focused on your own bags, then that could be, I mean, you have to see how important this is for your own bags.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. Look, I love Stone as well, and she's just done so much for punks, and she bleeds punks too. So I think it should be really happy to hear, I guess, artists like yourself sort of say that. But I think, on the contrary as well, I think the artwork that came out from Nina probably wasn't exciting and I think it had some political aspects to it as well, and I guess that sort of didn't help, I guess, given the type of demographic that we have in crypto. And so I think, I mean, you could sort of argue both sides, but I appreciate the intent for sure. But I think it's just that specific one. If it was a different artist or a different art piece that was dropped, it could have been very, very different, right? But that's not to say that that's the we shouldn't try. I think it's worth trying. But we'll see. It's one of those things. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And I remember, when apes were on that rise, and they started getting all these airdrops. I remember in the punks Discord, everyone getting shitty at Matt and John for sort of saying, do something for us. And then the converse right now is like, as soon as we do get a little bit of something, it's just like, just leave punks alone. Right? So it's like, I don't think you'll ever make punks happy. I mean, we're just so, divisive. And maybe that is punk in itself, right? We're very independent thinkers and diverse in that sort of nature, which makes it a little bit interesting too, I guess.
It does. Actually, you brought up a really good point. I mean, it is the punk in itself, right? That is the mentality, is to kind of stir up some shit. And look, the mantra of leave punks alone is the right mantra to have. And I believe that at its core, Yuga believes and understands that. And I believe the intention behind the Nina thing was well intended. The artwork, I mean, subjective, right? But I think artwork transcends like the importance of it all. Like punks are just pixels on a screen. Some are better looking than others, but again, that's subjective. You're not going to make everyone happy, but having names attached to it, like Nina, is super important.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's almost a bit of a shame and perhaps a missed opportunity too in some ways, because like kind of feels of what sort of happened, trying to get artists to acknowledge punk in that sort of same vein or have that connection with punk is probably closed now. Especially after that
Yeah.
tweet with Gaga, right? So and maybe it just changes over time. People move on, forget, and who knows, these Nina pieces might actually become relics like 10 years from now, right? A moment in time as well, right? Part of that punk's history.
Yeah. I think you have punk's history, but then you have fine art history, and that's really what I'm kind of leaning into. I mean, this is what happened in 2021, 2020 was a profound moment in art history.
Mm.
And algorithmic art is going to go down in history as a movement. There's no question about it. Art, like NFTs, like terraforms, are going to be studied, I believe, for ages.
For sure. I'm with you on that one. How do you feel about V1 punks?
Oof. That yeah, let's stir some shit up. Again, I come from the art world. I've seen some really crazy shit happen. If we're talking about provenance, if that is a selling tool for people to come into Web3 and acquire Web3 art, you got it. There's something there. I don't think it's anything like the V2, but I do think there's a place for it. And I don't know what that place is. I don't think it's going to be one of those things that the art world's going to deem it to be more important than V2. But it does create a very interesting case study for what happens when something is created versus what is like signed off on as being the official. What's created first, what's considered official. It's an interesting one. For me, having both I'm just gonna play that hand.
Yeah. Cool. And last question before we sort of wrap up. If you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, 4745, what would you like to say to them?
Don't make sex toys out of it. I don't see. I mean, look. Let's see what happens when the wild white that I love comes into play. The message will probably change once I find my dream punk. But I would say embrace the character of 4745. I think there's a lot there that could be built out. There's something interesting about the kind of clown nosed thief You know, one of the things I was saying to Tony was it would be a great story, kind of like a Tom and Jerry thing where, you know, I took his clown nose, I stole it from him, and I wouldn't give it back. And like it's kind of like this constant circle chase of him trying to
with
get it.
Tony having
Tony's
the green hair, green clown hair.
Yeah.
That's cool. And it's such a nice sort of story as well that ties in, and I mean it's evidence on the blockchain as well that 4745 came from Tony Herrera as well, and we've got his story documented on a podcast. Really sort of lovely guy and an asset to punks as well. But Jeremy, this has been super fun, man, and it was great to finally connect and get to learn your story. What a exciting, fantastic sort of journey. I need to dig into those laundromats a little bit more as well. I want to sort of see what they look like. But thank you so much for joining PunkCast. Any final closing comments, and what's the best way for people to find you?
Well, first, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. I love what you're doing. I love what you bring to the community. You could find me at Jeremy Penn on Twitter. As a fine artist, I built my Instagram before my Twitter, so a lot of my content earlier was there. But yeah, anyone can reach out to me. I'm pretty accessible. Website is jeremypenn.com. If you want to take a look at some of my earlier artwork and installations, and just like hit me up if anyone wants to chat. I love talking shit with people and chopping it up. As long as nobody's talking shit about people, I'm cool. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much again for joining PunkCast. And guys, that's a wrap for PunkCast for the weekend. We'll be back next week with another punk. Bye for now.